Win streaks are on the line coming up this weekend at lightweight. Mark Madsen looking to hold on and retain that. Oh, he's taking on Grant Dawson, who has a near perfect record, 18-1-1 for that top prospect. He's broken through. He wants to break into the ranks, and a win over Mark Madsen would definitely do him a lot of favors. And for Madsen, he came into the UFC a little bit late in the game. He came into MMA a bit late into the game, but he's definitely proved that his skill sets of wrestling, and Greco-Roman wrestling in particular, have translated very well. And if you look at it from Madsen, didn't get a medal in 2008 in Beijing, didn't get a medal in London in 2012, but in Rio, at about 32, he got it done, silver medal there, cross that one off, let's start MMA. He ends up into the UFC, debuts at home in Denmark against the Caterpillar, Danilo Belluardo.
That was a big deal, too. That's why I like it when they take fight nights on the road. I'm sorry, I don't mean to hijack your point, but I effing hate the fact that they keep on doing fight nights at the Apex. Like, give these fighters the opportunity to fight in front of their hometown crowds.
It's like that Lil Dicky song. They're saving that money.
They are, but you know what I mean? Like, even as a fan watching from home, even if you're watching on the TV, it feels like a much more immersive experience if you see the crowd really rally behind their own fighters. And I know you're going to get on board with the point I'm about to make. Remember when Gavin Tucker walked out in Halifax in the main card?
Biggest pop I've ever heard.
Gavin Tucker's somebody who a lot of you guys might not even know at this point. Like, he's a featherweight in the UFC who's had some ups, has some downs, but he made his debut on a card in Halifax, which is kind of his adopted hometown, if you will. He grew up in this area of Canada that you call the Maritimes, and just sort of
Halifax. He grew up in Atlanta, Canada.
He grew up in Atlanta, Canada, and this fight was sort of an extension of that. So it was a hometown crowd, and like you had said, he's not somebody who has the fanfare of a LeBron James, of a John Moran, of a Jason Tatum, but you would have thought that for the night. You know what I mean? Like, people in that crowd treated him like he was the king of the world. And that's what we don't get when we get these fight nights at the Apex in front of 15 people and only, like, friends and family. Like
the king of Citadel Hill and the queen of Portland Street.
For Mark Madsen, he is somebody who, again, if you put him in front of the right crowd, he's going to get a pop like a national hero like you wouldn't believe. And I just feel like we do lose a lot from that when we get these shows at the Apex. It's always been a problem I've had since they keep on doing fight nights at the Apex. I hate it.
We'll stop pandering to Nova Scotia, but we do focus in on Mark Madsen. He beats Danilo Belluardo. He beats Austin Hubbard by decision. Slowed down a little bit as the fight went on. Hubbard had a little bit of an opportunity there, but a good win for Madsen. Beats Clay Guida by split decision, which was a tight one. His last time out, he beat Vince Pichel, and that was the first time that Madsen had gotten taken down in the UFC. It was a late second round takedown by Pichel. It was a single that he kind of turned into a double, cradled those legs, dumped him on his bottom, and stopped getting it in the round ends. But for Madsen, once he worked in his own takedowns, we know Pichel is really good with his boxing. Yeah. He's great with his mustache. He's poor with his takedown defense, and that's where Madsen was able to win out. But what I've seen in the last two fights, the Clay Guida fight, the Vince Pichel fight, Madsen doesn't have to go out there and wrestle from second, 5 after the glove touch to the end of the fight. He really has been comfortable with his hands. This is his third straight camp at Fight Ready. Eddie Chaw, Santino DeFranco, great training partners. I'm sure the triple champ, Triple C, gets a little bit in there, gets into the mix, maybe the Korean Zombie as well. But for Madsen, I've seen him more active with his hands. I've seen some more leg kicks out of his game. I've seen the one fatal flaw still rear its ugly head, but I don't think it's going to get him finished against Grant Dawson. True. Every time in the boxing combinations that Mark Madsen makes, I don't know if it's a read or it's a tick or what it is. And if it is, I don't mean to make fun of him for it. So I will put that out there. He dips to his left every single time. He'll stop, he'll dip, he'll throw, he'll dip. He dips to his left every single time. And against a guy like Grant Dawson, who will switch his stances a lot, if he goes to southpaw, he dips to his left, and then he throws a counter hook, it could be a great time for Grant Dawson. If Grant Dawson even fought like that. He doesn't really fight like that.
I can personalize this, because you're 100% right with the read that you've made on Mark Madsen. Did you ever have a tick in a sport that you played? I did in basketball.
I had a hitch in my swing in baseball,
Fair.
And then when I went to play softball, I had to completely change my swing for a full year to where it was all the way back.
That's fair.
And then I pushed into.
I was a really good three-point shooter growing up. I can't hit free throws to save my life. Not that, the moment's too big for me, but I can openly admit this. I overthink the heck out of it, because if I'm shooting a three, it's okay. I'm going to drive on the left side. I'm going to go into the paint. They're going to run a play called floppy for me, and it's just going to be a screen. I'm going to go into the left corner. I know what that that is, it's like a mechanical thing I can do over and over again. With a free throw, it's like, hey, it's just you and all these people who are watching you do that thing. And for Madsen, it does feel like there is that disconnect with his striking offense in the cage. And you're right, against a guy like Grant Dawson, it might not get him caught. But that's one of those reads that in Mark Madsen, you're going to have to watch for every single opponent. Because, okay, let's say he does make that mistake against Grant Dawson. It's not going to get caught against Dawson. But if you beat him, you're probably fighting a ranked opponent next. And I think we all realize how good the top 15 in the lightweight division is. And that's the weird thing about this fight.
Winner gets Mateusz Gamrot, and I'm rock hard for it.
I've said this for a long time, though, and I think you agree with me. Mark Madsen, since he has gotten into the UFC so late in life, since he has such a good foundation, he is an Olympian, of course, that is his nickname, he was going to have that big step up in competition at a certain point. This is definitely that step up in competition, but I do feel like since it's against a guy whose strengths are very similar to Mark Madsen's strengths, it's not as dangerous of a fight as if he was fighting a guy who, let's say, had really good takedown defense and was a great striker. I can't think of anybody in the lightweight division off the top of my head, but just think of like a smaller Robert Whittaker type. Like for Madsen, this is a good step up in competition because Dawson is the more experienced guy against top levels of competition, but Dawson's areas of success are going to directly overlap with Mark Madsen.
And for Grant Dawson, been in the UFC for a time or two, you consider it. Made his UFC debut against Julian Erosa after winning on Dana White's Contender Series. He beats Mike Trezano, earns a performance bonus, beats Darrick Minner, beats Nan Narimani, Leonardo Santos, another performance bonus. He kind of come back, hammer fist, and then his last time out took on Jared Gordon. He does have a draw against Ricky Glenn, and it is like the 1996 Matchbox 20 hit. I'm gonna push you around. I will. Because Ricky Glenn pushed him the F around in that third round. Ricky, call me Ricky now. He 10-8'd him in the third round. But for Grant Dawson, he has awkward striking, and he kind of does the Anthony Smith, like, Muay Thai knee thing, yeah. But it's not a net positive because he does lift his leg up there. He's got good kicks, but he will throw the kick and then do the old spinorama, which could get you caught. Grant Dawson, to me, is taking on a guy whose bare bones game is somewhat similar. Size-wise, striking-wise, not really wrestling-wise, but when the guy was winning wrestling-wise, Nad Narimani. I look at the Narimani fight, I look at Mark Madsen, look at Nad Narimani's face at the end of that fight. It's bloodied right up. Dawson's having success in the striking. He had success in the wrestling and some of the grappling exchanges. If you do consider it, though, this is Dawson's second camp at American Top Team. He was a Long Glory MMA and fitness guy. The Matchbox 20, the Rob Thomas was too much for him, so he had to go down to American Top Team after the draw to Ricky Glenn. I'm eager to see, though, Madsen can take it to the mat. Can Grant Dawson take it to the mat? And I saw Vince Pichel take it to the mat, which gives me a little bit of an idea that maybe Dawson can. But Dawson's takedowns, he really does like to go for that high crotch single leg and then work in some trips. He will go to your upper body. He will switch it around, but likes that high crotch entry. I'm wondering if Madsen's able to counter that, because for Madsen, upper body, Greco-Roman throws, Greco-Roman wrestling. Will Dawson have success with some of those takedowns of his own here?
So we grew up in this rural area of Canada. It's just like the middle of nowhere. It's just a community.
It hasn't been established yet.
But exactly. And I just remember our grandparents saying this saying, and it's how much hay can you bale while the sun's up? And for Grant Dawson, I think he can get more done, and I do like his activity more in this matchup. I do agree with you. I think their primary skill sets do overlap quite a bit, but I think once you do start to get into the more nuanced areas of their game, Madsen's a lot more control-oriented. I think you'd agree with me. If there's a finish in this fight, Grant Dawson's probably the one who's finishing Mark Madsen. Whereas Mark Madsen, he can win this fight, but I much more see him as winning like a 30-27 decision where his wrestling's going to be positive from the first minute of the fight to the 15th minute of the fight, where I don't really see him getting into a lot of sticky situations. Whereas if Grant Dawson wins, it's going to be a lot of damage, it's going to be a lot of top control, a lot of ground and pound, and that's why I think this fight is so much fun, because for Madsen, we all know how good his wrestling is. Again, there's not a lot of fighters in the UFC who are at that Olympic level in any singular area of their mixed martial arts game, but the fact that Madsen does, not only, he's not just an Olympian, like this guy has a medal in the Olympics, so Madsen's background cannot be overlooked, but I still think Grant Dawson's game is more suited towards MMA. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
40% takedown defense for Grant Dawson. Stats on a page, Contender Series UFC included. Diaz went 1 for 2 on Contender Series. Minner went 1 of 1. and Santos went 1 of 2. Those are the only people that tried to take down Grant Dawson, and that's the reason why it's 40% takedown defense. So we have a look at the odds. Dawson is favored to win, open -150, -222. Madsen on the comeback, open +130, +178. We have a look at the Tapology votes. Matt, surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 70% Dawson, but I have a hard time here.
I think they're going to be under, I do.
And they are. So 437 total votes, 62% Dawson, 66% by decision for the 38% that have Madsen, 88% by decision. You tipped your hand, you got Dawson.
I do. I think he's the younger fighter, and like I said,
no way.
A lot of their primary skill sets do overlap. And when a guy is a decade younger, it's very harder to pick, or it's very difficult to pick, the more senior of the two in this matchup. Again, I think Mark Madsen does have a path to victory. If he uses offensive wrestling, it is very control-oriented. I think he can win this fight. But the thing is, Madsen is going to really rely on the judges and their scorecards, I think, to win this fight. Again, not saying he can't get finishes against guys who are at the UFC level. I think he's going to struggle to out-grapple Grant Dawson to the point where he submits him. You know what I mean?
And I said, I think the winner would get a guy like Mateusz Gamrot. Dawson's been training with Gamrot to get ready for this one, training with Thiago Moises, training with Natan Schultz.
Some pretty good guys to train for.
So Moises and Gamrot are probably out of the equation. Schultz with the PFL, but I do like Dawson's ability to finish in this matchup. When I do look at everything part and parcel, who has the better ability to finish when it does come down to something like this? I'd say Dawson, but it is a tight fight, and I'm surprised the odds are that spread apart.
But I'll say this, good on Mark Madsen, because he doesn't have to take a fight this difficult, I don't think. I think he can go to the UFC and say, hey, I want more guys who I'm going to be a significant favorite over, because I am a big name in Europe, in a country that you don't have a lot of fighters in. I think this is a significant step up in competition, and I just think at some points you have to applaud a fighter for taking a difficult fight that they don't necessarily have to take. I think there's a world where, again, Mark Madsen continues to fight guys that he has a massive grappling advantage over. He just keeps on looking good in decision wins, and he never really takes that next step. This is that next step against a guy like Grant Dawson. That's why I'm excited for the fight, but I agree with you. I also have Dawson.
Both of us going with KGD to get the win coming up this weekend. Let us know what you have in the comment section. Really eager to hear your thoughts because those Tapology votes are wonky, and so are the odds. Some big-time fights on this card, including Josh Parisian and Chase Sherman. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.